Hello, I'm Cliff Sarantine, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Wildwood Ways, Edible and Medicinal Treasures. Today we're going to take a look at the Jerusalem Artichoke. This is a much desired and little understood plant that is indigenous to eastern Canada and up northeastern New England. The Jerusalem Artichoke is a tall plant. Here we can see the Jerusalem Artichokes that several years ago I transferred to an outer bed of our potato patch. You can also notice that the Jerusalem Artichokes are rapidly trying to spread into the meadow. It is a very aggressive plant that grows small, threading, tough roots, and wherever those roots grow, they will produce tubers. Those tubers act like nodes. The tubers will grow, produce eyes, and the next year from those eyes, new plants will burst into being. In the same way that strawberries spread aggressively with runners, Jerusalem artichokes will clone themselves, except that their runners are roots and they are effectively underground, offering added protection. Jerusalem artichokes are known to be tenacious. That is to say, wherever they grow, they are likely to stay. If you find a wild Jerusalem artichoke plant, pull it up and transfer the tubers into ground near your home. Be sure it is where you want it, because unless you intend to lay over some tarp over that ground and shade it out from sun for a year or two, they are there to stay. It is unlikely you will ever be able to get them out. In fact, this outer row of the part of our gardens that we call the potato patch, we don't even bother to replant this section. We simply go through here in autumn and we harvest every Jerusalem artichoke we can find. Any little tuber left over, any little bit that we missed, will form a new node from which the Jerusalem artichokes will grow back come the spring. And no matter what we do, no matter how carefully we sift the soil, we always manage to miss plenty. So we don't even have to bother to replant this outer row. We simply till up the ground, mound it up, and let the Jerusalem artichokes grow. The reason we till the ground is that breaks up the soil. At the same time as we till it, we add fertilizer to the soil, and that gives the Jerusalem artichokes extra energy. The combination of loose soil and ready nutritious compost for the plant allows the Jerusalem artichoke plants to make very large tubers, and it is not uncommon for us to pull tubers out of the ground as big as chicken eggs. Jerusalem artichokes are easily identified. They will have one to several blossoms up top that strongly resemble the sunflower, except they are smaller. The central part of the Jerusalem artichoke blossom will be black like a sunflower until it is producing pollen, as this one here is, at which time the pollen makes it overall yellow. This handsome plant is distinctively tall. In fact, the one just before me is about 6.5 feet tall. The stems are about 1/3 to 1/2 of an inch thick and covered with a tough, bristly fuzz. The leaves are small up top, about the size of an average woman's hand, and they get larger and larger as one gets lower to the base of the plant, getting to be about the size of a man's foot. The leaves are distinctively shaped like heavily toothed teardrops. They have a pronounced central vein and a smaller vein running up either side. You can see on this leaf how the smaller veins that run up either side approach the outer edge of the leaf, and then rather than going straight out, they trace just inside the outer edge, 1/4 to 1/2 inch, down toward near the lanceolate point of the leaf. As the outer veins get near the end of the leaf, they seem to merge into the edge of the leaf itself. Jerusalem artichokes may be found singly, or in groups of just a few, or in dense clusters. It really depends on how long they've been in whatever area they are, and how loose and friable the soil is underneath. If it's wild but loose and good ground, they will spread into a thicket rapidly. If it's tight, hard-packed soil, it will take them time, but eventually, if given enough time, they will form a large cluster. I always note those places where I find Jerusalem artichokes growing wild in the meadows around our homestead, because those are places that could be a valuable food source one day should the need ever arise. No plant produces more food per square foot than the Jerusalem artichoke. Not even the legendary potato can outproduce the Jerusalem artichoke. If you haven't tried them, and it seems these days few people have, the tubers have a wonderful flavor. They're very much like artichoke hearts. Bear in mind that the blossoms rarely emerge until the weather is cooling and autumn is beginning. Here in Atlantic Canada, that typically means early to middle September. And they will continue to blossom sometimes right into November. The blossoms are extremely frost resistant, and I have seen them cling to the plants themselves well into November. This is a semi-wild Jerusalem artichoke patch we established several years ago, roughly 20 feet by 20 feet, and added about 500 pounds of compost to it. And then we scattered Jerusalem artichoke tubers throughout it. They spread very quickly in that growing medium. When harvesting Jerusalem artichokes, it is important to wait until the blossoms are dying back. The tubers are extremely unpleasant to eat until they have fully matured. But bear in mind, even once they have become large and wrinkly looking on the surface and have developed eyes, in other words, they look like mature tubers, they still may not be ripe. It is important not to harvest Jerusalem artichoke tubers until the blossoms have died back. If you do so before, well, artichoke rhymes with fartichoke. Jerusalem artichokes are noteworthy for the terrible flatulence they cause if they are harvested early. To avoid the problem, simply wait until all the blossoms have died back, and ideally until you have had at least one hard frost in your area. You should do this whether you are harvesting wild Jerusalem artichokes you found growing in a glade somewhere, or whether you're harvesting Jerusalem artichokes from a garden. In this image, we see Jerusalem artichokes after they have reached the time for harvest. Notice that not only have the artichokes shed their blossoms, but they've also dried out. To harvest Jerusalem artichokes, if the soil is soft and friable, merely grasp a bunch of them and pull them up. They will come up with a large clump of soil. Tap the base of the plants with your hands or give them a good solid shake to shake off the excess soil. You will probably find a lot of Jerusalem artichokes. They could be anywhere from the size of peanuts still in the shell to the size of chicken eggs. After you have harvested the Jerusalem artichokes you are able to shake out of the dirt that way, get a shovel and dig underneath into the soil. You will likely find more J-chokes growing all around the plant, but you don't want to stop there. You want to continue digging deeper. I have found that growing almost directly beneath each plant will be, you might think of it as a central artichoke. A particularly huge tuber as much as half the size of a potato. This particular artichoke is usually growing at the very bottom of the friable soil, anywhere from 5 to 10 inches down. Be careful as you dig for this large J-choke so that you don't break it. As I said earlier, nothing yields a greater harvest per square foot than Jerusalem artichokes. Here you can see 5 full crates of large Jerusalem artichokes harvested in the course of a single afternoon from that one row I had planted at the edge of my potato garden. That is over 150 pounds of food from a single 50-foot long, 1.5-foot wide row normally used for potatoes. If I had planted potatoes in this row, I would have gotten perhaps 80 pounds. The potential yield of Jerusalem artichokes is huge, and I did not even bother to go through this row very thoroughly. Had I would probably have gotten 20 to 30% more. But I always make it a point to leave some J-chokes in the ground to reseed the plant for next year. That way, all I have to do is put compost over this row and till it. I don't do anything beyond that. I don't weed, water, or in any other way take care of the Jerusalem artichoke patches. They take care of themselves. I've always loved artichokes in just about any way you can prepare and present them. And when it comes to flavor, Jerusalem artichokes do not let me down. Their taste is so strongly reminiscent of artichoke hearts, the most desirable part of the artichoke plant. When we prepare them, we simply twice boil them and drain the water, and then we boil them again until they're tender. We mash the fully cooked tubers into a mush, just as you would with mashed potatoes, and then we butter that and eat just as it is. It is absolutely delicious. It is also good with a little sour cream. Pretty much any recipe you can find for artichoke hearts, you can apply that recipe to Jerusalem artichokes. Thank you for having joined me for another episode of Wildwood Ways, Edible and Medicinal Treasures. Keep watching to learn more about the natural world and the joys of getting to know it. As always, go soft, go gently, and leave no trace. Let's go home, boy.